Hello, Alexander. Thank you for being with us today. You're the General Director of the Paris National Opera, and we're really happy to have this conversation with you on the occasion of the 150th anniversary of the Palais Garnier to share with us your perspective on the past and going forwards towards the future. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, as we celebrate 150 years of the Palais Garnier, how do you strike the balance between the history and the cultural heritage of this institution and innovation on stage and beyond to appeal also to tomorrow's audiences?
I mean, see, in a certain way, our history is our future. First of all, because we draw from almost 400 years of repertoire. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it created, not in this building, but by our institution. And the history of innovation is essentially the history of opera and ballet is a history of innovation. So it's stepping on the past, if you want, to always go higher and always go further, and be inspired by the history of the company, also be inspired by the history of this building, mm-hmm. which really in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, became a center of creativity, starting with Diaghilev, who rented the building for the Ballet Russe. The Bolero was created here. And then the most obvious sign still is the ceiling by Chagall, which we admire every day. And even the people who work here, yes, like you and me, the Chagall always produces an effect. As many times as we've seen it, and the audacity of André Malraux, mm-hmm. to go to Chagall and say, redo the ceiling of the opera, make a new ceiling, and bring, at that time, contemporary art into this very iconic 19th century building. I think that has really marked the history, and it's encouraged us to use this building to push further ahead with projects that might be just a little bit more avant-garde as what you would dare in a regular theater.
Alexander, can you share with us more insights about the funding model of the Paris National Opera and how this complementarity of private and public funding is becoming more and more relevant, and the role that philanthropy plays for this institution?
It's a very relevant subject for us today. When I was first here as a director of casting from 2004 to 2008, the company, which is a national company and which is still today very massively supported by the French government. We were at about 65% of public funding, and then it very rapidly changed. And we are today 40% of public funding compared to the overall budget, which was a significant change for the company because we essentially needed to develop our own resources very rapidly, and mostly the two revenue streams of tickets and fundraising, and that we will have to develop other revenues, diversify our revenues, and always find new partners to support what we do, which I think also gives us a certain connection with society at large that you don't have when you're only dependent on one major revenue stream.
Mm-hmm. And can you give examples also of these kind of private partnerships that the institution has developed over the years that actually enabled the house to also evolve in certain areas thanks to those private partnerships?
What's remarkable about those private partnerships is our partners tend to be very loyal. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of them have been with us for 20 plus years, and they've accompanied the transition to a new funding model by always stepping up a little bit further and being partners in the true sense of the word. Not only partners who support us with money, but also partners who support us with expertise, mm-hmm. who help us develop projects, which again creates relationships for the company that I think that are really, really important for us to find our place in a contemporary environment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in this context of shifting funding models and public-private partnerships, how do you see FEDORA's added value in helping opera houses in these contexts?
I mean, FEDORA has been a partner of ours for a very long time. And what we appreciate about this relationship is the expertise that FEDORA brings to really more than one field, I think, in our interaction, because you're much closer to an environment that is beyond the public funding models. You have been for quite some time. You're close to the European Union, which we're not. We're close to the French government. And you're always in a spirit of comparison and to draw the best from what you can pick up from different sources. And I think that's been very valuable to have an organization that in a way synthesizes or synchronizes those efforts and really provides the best advice that you can draw from those very diverse pieces of information that you gather all over the place.
And from your experiences being on the opera jury, how have you also seen the relevance and the importance of supporting new works that are not yet realized yet, and maybe by less known artists? And in what way does philanthropy play a really big role for these kind of works?
I mean, the sad truth about producing opera is that it's very expensive. As I think Churchill said, there's only one more thing that's more expensive than war, it's opera. And so the challenge, and then they say producing opera, you break it down in two categories. Rehearsals are cost without revenue, and performances are cost with revenue, and you try to balance those two. And the part of performing, which is the cost with revenue part, there's a certain risk in that, because to predict your revenues accurately is a very important thing for every opera company, of course. But if there's no reference in terms of a piece that never has been performed, it's very hard to predict what the revenue will be. And we also know that audiences have a certain resistance to unknown work. They prefer to go to work that is more considered safe value. So for us, as producers of opera, to always find this little space for risk-taking is something that we want to do, but it's not always something we can do. If the risk is completely out of balance with the cost, we sometimes refrain from doing it. Yet we have to create. And it's very important to not rest with the existing canon and in a way recycle it over and over again, but to really add new pieces to the canon to create and take that much higher level of risk, right? And we're in an environment today, of course, where any new work competes with a season that's populated with only the masterpieces from the past, right? Any season that you would build today, you take essentially the best pieces you can find from the last 400 years. And then comes this new piece, and it somehow sits in the season between Don Giovanni and Tristan. And the expectation is that it's going to be at that level. Like logically, that's not possible, but yet we have to create, and we also have to take the risk that it might be a failure or a success. And for that, we need risk capital. And that's why funding new work is so important. That we have people or organizations who help us carry that risk and make new work possible. Not knowing what it will be, right? There's an issue of trust in that relationship too, to say we put our trust in this new work and we wish for it to succeed, and also under the best possible conditions.
Yes, and from your perspective also as a jury member, it's also interesting to hear this debate happening between you and your peers, debating about the potential, the weaknesses, and also the opportunities that these new works offer. And it's always very interesting to hear also how you are coming together as experts in the field and defining together what piece do we want to give a chance to actually emerge and reach the stage. And
I would say there's a huge margin of error there too. I mean, you encounter these pieces on the paper, right? Which is not quite the same as encountering them in the theater in a performance situation. Again, there's a question of appreciating what's written on the page. Sometimes there's a little bit of music to listen to, but usually you don't really get a lot of the original product. Yet you have to evaluate it and try to figure out what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, and then agree with your fellow jury members. And what's interesting, I think everybody comes to it from another angle, with their own personal experience, maybe also with their own expectation for what they would like to see in their own programming. Everybody also serves a different community, right? I think you cannot think programming in general, but certainly not creation, out of the context of the potential audience. It can't be too narrowly defined, but if it's too broad, it won't work either. So there's a lot of parameters that are highly volatile almost,
yes,
that you need to appreciate.
And also in this context, what we're always looking for are co-productions. As you were saying, it's about measuring risk and also maybe decreasing it by sharing the costs, and also making this project more accessible internationally, to not just be a one-off event in one place, but actually reach international audiences.
Yeah. I think there's an issue of sharing cost, of course. The initial investment of making the new work possible, but it's also an issue of ensuring actual performances, because a lot of new work, as good as it might be, never has a sizable audience, because there's only one company producing, and they put on whatever number of performances they put on, and after that it's finished and nobody will ever touch it. So if you get the buy-in of a number of co-producers or co-commissioners right from the beginning, you actually ensure for the work to be seen. It seems to me more and more crucial. I mean, we've been doing that a number of times with past and future commissions here, for the simple reason that I think the work needs to be seen, but also for the audience to appreciate contemporary work more and better, they need to see more of it more regularly.
Absolutely, to train the eye and the appreciation for the novelty. Yeah.
Essentially go back to a culture which we will not be able to go back to completely, but to say in Handel's time, the audiences were eminently used to always seeing new work.
True.
And they would be curious about new work. When we have a more opposite dynamic today, at least with the large audience, where people, as I've said before, go more for safe value, and where we need to make that case for new work. And we've seen that over and over again here and in other places, that we are able to make the case, people will come.
When looking at the future of the art forms of opera and dance, supporting emerging talent is very, very crucial, and they're at the heart of this art form. Can you share with us a bit more about what the Paris Opera is doing in encouraging and nurturing the careers of such talents?
Well, I think we're always very preoccupied by the audience of the future. And sometimes I think we're not preoccupied enough about the artists of the future, because there will be no audience if there's no artists, very simply put. So we've, with our academy, a long-standing commitment to develop young singers, pianists, instrumentalists, even people who will work in our workshops to create sets and costumes in the future. And that's a pretty essential commitment, to train at our level young artists who will be familiar with the workings of a very large company. Yes,
and when talking about the support of emerging talent, we also talk about diversity of talent and the inclusionness of an institution. And so can you maybe share also with us how the Paris National Opera is putting that at the heart of its strategy and everything that it does on, behind and beyond the stage?
I need to put it on stage, and the only way to do that is with artists of today for an audience of today. So if it's a commissioned work or an opera by Monteverdi, I still need the same artists of today to make their case for that piece for an audience of today. And I'm really fascinated by that, because we're in a business where we tell stories, right? And I actually don't believe that the works themselves change a lot, but the way we look at them changes, because we are different people. As performers, but we're also different people as an audience. So we find different things in those pieces. And while they travel through time and the way we see them changes, they accumulate meaning. And for me, that's a wonderful thing, because it enriches, in return, our knowledge of the pieces. We understand them differently. We understand them, I don't know if better is the right word, but it shows that it's a journey that's never over.
Yes.
Right, and that we don't detain the truth about a work of art. We can only ever see the work of art from our point of view, which is valid as long as it lasts, and then there will be other valid points of views. And that's of course where it becomes interesting when you look at how theater was supposed to work in society. Is essentially theater is a major device of learning how to agree to disagree.
Absolutely, yes, and to have a dialogue.
And to learn how to talk about it. And the genius device of Greek tragedy, of course, was to put major issues of society on stage. And by telling the audience that it's supposed to be a work of art, you kind of trick the audience into thinking that it's not about them, because it's theater, or it's essentially a play situation. But of course, it's all about them. And through this really ingenious device, it's some kind of deceit, if you want, you seduce the audience into apprehending those issues that they would not want to touch in real life. And then they walk out of the theater and if they want or not, they've taken something out of it.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, you have the other part that's totally magical about performances. Of course, you have several thousand people in the same space. You turn off the light. It's an incredible equalizer. Everybody's the same, and it's a collective and an individual experience at once. And I like to say there is like no such a thing like the audience. There's 2,000 audiences here. Every night at Bastille it's 2,700, and yet they share something, and yet it's a totally individual experience. And that's there's a certain tension about that, of course. But there's also then the ability to, in the next step, say, I like this, I didn't like it. And then if you get to talk to the why, then you have the dialogue.
And it actually enables to create the listening, the attentiveness in a dialogue if you want to understand why the person you just shared 3 hours next to or 5.
Yeah, and the magic of it is that it's all about the emotion that's in the work of art. And if it's a painting or a play, we tend to think that through music the emotion gets reinforced, heightened. And that really is, for me, the total magic about interacting with art is that the first contact with any work of art is always emotional.
Extremely, yes. And actually what you're just saying, you're actually pursuing strategically on all different topics. Is it like going to identifying talent all over the world, bringing them to the company, and in different areas you're actually fulfilling this vision actually?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a choice, because I think if we want to keep it going at the level that it's going at the moment, you really have to look for your talent, but also for your audience, wherever you can potentially find them. You can absolutely not exclude any part of it. And what I discovered when we started doing that at a slightly larger scale is not only that people are afraid to come to us, but there's also places where we're afraid to go because we think we will not be welcomed. So
in today's world, where sustainability is a very important aspect of everything that we do in terms of how we plan our organization's work activities and how we reach out to audiences, etc., how is the Paris National Opera setting itself up and its institution physically and also behind the scenes in operations in order to become more sustainable in the future?
I think sustainability is a subject that not only we, but a lot of performing arts organizations have been blissfully unaware of for a very long time, because we didn't really feel that it was something that we could interact with, contribute to. And it really has changed a lot over the last 5 to 10 years, because I think we've all understood that if we want to be in phase with society, we need to also take on those rather uncomfortable subjects and find a way to treat them internally in the way we function as a company, but also as far as it reflects to what we put on our stage. And, consumption of energy is a huge issue. Of course, when we did our first energy audit, we discovered that the Paris Opera consumes the energy of a town of 8,000 people every year. But I think you need to need to visualize it that way, so that people in the company actually understand this is something that we need to know more about. We need to know where we're wasteful. We need to know how we can improve our energetic performance, how we can be a more responsible citizen, and not just be, as I said before, blissfully unaware and claim that we're in the business of producing art. Certain major subjects of society don't apply to us. And I think it's been a very, very useful and healthy process for the company to go through this and to understand where are we, where do we need to be, and how do we build the bridge to get there, right? And sometimes it's very simple things, just to turn off your computer when you leave for work. That's no different from any other business, right? Yes. But there's also other issues that are more specific to what we do, like how do you build your sets? How do you build your costumes? How do you build your props? Are there elements that you can actually reuse? And we've been part of an initiative with a number of other companies that has looked in great detail into building sets in a more sustainable way and invent modules that you can remove from any given set and reuse easily in any newly built set, or even that there's almost a shared infrastructural base for any given set that you then add on whatever you need to add on in creativity. So it's not about always doing the same thing, but it's about all the things that you don't see and how to, in a very clever way, without taking away any of the creative space, be more sustainable at the same time.
And we're really happy to hear this from an institution such as the Paris Opera, and which resonates completely also with many organizations that share this vision on a European scale. And we're happy to see that all these efforts we're able to back and support and encourage through the Next Stage initiative. And that is also in line with Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen's, the President of the European Commission's vision of the new European Bauhaus in Europe, to also drive this change through culture, and that actually we as organizations in the cultural field can help this transition and movement through our own activities, as you just said, by also touching and moving audiences in a very direct way.
Yeah. Well, I think, culture more than anything is our shared European identity. And the more pertinent we can keep it, and the more we can keep it in front of what people see of Europe, I think the better it will be.
And the core also of opera and dance creations is a team, is a joint spirit, a commitment to create something great, and by coming together with different talents and complementary experiences. And that's basically what Europe is doing and trying to do on an economic and political level. And we're happy to see that within the collaborations that are happening in the performing arts world, that these are values that are lived on a daily basis.
And that have to be lived on, because one thing in a way then creates the other. I think it's a lot about the critical mass for culture, and to not relegate culture to something that is something for the good days, right? I think we need culture for the good days and the bad days, and it maybe plays a different role depending on the situation, but that it's something that belongs to us and to our daily life, that's about us and for us, and that can't be without us. I think that's very important.
To conclude, what would you say are your wishes for the next 150 years of the Paris National Opera?
Well, I think what we very much would want to is to stay at the center of society, to be part of a public discourse where we talk about the importance of art in people's lives, that we can bring that awareness to people who have been excluded from those kind of movements in the past, that we can always share more, that we can always open up new channels of recruitment, that we can make, the fact that you want to be in the audience, but that also you want to be on stage, something that everybody can aspire to.
Thank you so much for sharing this insight with us today on this special occasion, and we're very much looking forward to the years to come and to all the evolutions and plans that you have for this institution. And we hope that in the future also Europe will be able to support and continue to support all these initiatives that are happening at opera houses across Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.